Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is a very talented writer for The Athletic, Chris Vannini. Welcome to BYU Sports Nation, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You just put out your BYU football state of the program projection for the 2018 football season. I want to start with this. When you think of BYU football, just from an overall standpoint, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing that came to mind for a while was consistency. I mean, this was a team that had made 11 straight bowl games heading into last year. Sometimes it was by the offense leading the way, sometimes by the defense in the latter years. So I always just viewed it as a tough program that was always consistent, would always be a tough game for everybody. But then last year, obviously, the bottom falls out, and suddenly, your perceptions of the program very much change. And heading into 2018, I think this is a very big year in terms of what the perception of the program is going to be moving forward.
You talked about what comes back for BYU, and it's a lot. 96% of the passing yards, 99% of the rushing yards, 89% of the receiving yards. But that's from a group that went 4-9. So what do you think of the group that returns for BYU, especially on offense?
Well, yeah, obviously they bring just about everybody back, and theoretically there's nowhere to go but up. I mean, they were near the bottom of the country in every single offensive category, basically, and as a result, Kalani Sitake overhauls basically the entire offensive staff and brings in a bunch of new guys. Jeff Grimes is the offensive coordinator, and so he knows that things need to change. I think there's reason for optimism. I mean, the final 4 games, Squally Canada, averages like 7 yards a carry. Tanner Mangum's had some good seasons in the past when he's healthy. Obviously, you got to see when he's healthy. So, Matt Bushman as a freshman last year showed a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of there's potential. There's pieces here that can be done, and you give everybody another year of experience, that'll be good. However, Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, has never been an offensive coordinator before, so you don't really know what you're going to get from him. You don't really know what kind of offense he's going to end up leaning on. I know he wants to be multiple, but that could mean anything at this point in the year. So I think there's reasons for optimism, but, I'm not going to go out and say this is going to be a pretty good offense because, obviously you got to show it first.
Chris Vannini from The Athletic with us on BYU Sports Nation. BYU returns a lot of the offense from last year that you just brought up, some specific names. 96% of the passing yards, 99% of the rushing yards. What's the most optimistic thing that BYU fans should hang their hats on at this juncture?
Do you mean in regards to the offense or the team in general?
Just the team, the offense, it might be the offense. What do you think?
I think it's going to be the pass rush. They really like the defensive line, the guys they got. They moved Sione Takitaki, the linebacker, to get some more speed on the field. They seem to think this is going to be the fastest, most athletic defense that they've had in quite some time there. They moved a lot of guys around different positions to get them in better spots, and I think the pass rush is going to be pretty good. Obviously, Taki, then Corbin Kafusi leading the defensive line, and they're the big guy. So I think the pass rush is probably going to be the strength of this team.
The BYU schedule is certainly a tough one, and the Cougars have chosen to challenge themselves immensely. What do you think of the 2018 schedule for the BYU Cougars?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, and especially that first half. And, I think you kind of got to see if things don't go well to start, if they snowball and kind of, get out of control like it did last year. Opening at Arizona is a very tough game. Khalil Tate, the quarterback, could be a Heisman contender again. Home against Cal, a decent team last year that should be better in year 2 under Justin Wilcox. At Wisconsin, which will be contending for the college football playoff. McNeese State, obviously FCS, and then at Washington, which is another team contending for the playoffs. So you could see the team coming out 1-4 out of those first 5 games, and if that happens, you wonder, are they going to be able to turn things around? Now, if they come out of that, maybe 3-2, then suddenly things are looking really good. They're heading into the second half. So it's a tough schedule, and I know you guys were just talking about it. I think making a bowl game against this schedule, when you include the Boise game, the Utah game, Northern Illinois, Utah State obviously, beat BYU last year. I think it's I don't know if it's a major accomplishment, but I think it's an important accomplishment. This could be a much better team than a year ago, but the record may not reflect that.
And that's the issue I have with BYU's schedule is I don't see what the point of scheduling so tough is. it's hard to be relevant without a conference unless you get ranked, and you aren't getting ranked unless you probably win 10 games. There's probably some happy medium between what BYU's doing and not doing something that's too easy. So what do you think of the way BYU schedules? Like, what does it do for the Cougars, and how does it maybe hurt BYU?
I'm not in the athletic department, so I can't say the various, positives of and financials of different things. But obviously bigger games get you bigger platforms, bigger broadcast games, bigger TV, and that's important to the school. And if you win those games, that pushes you up even more. The downside is obviously you lose those games and you start to become less relevant, and that's the balancing act that they've been trying to figure out. And I know Bronco Mendenhall kind of went back and forth on that during his tenure. I think there's a mix you can do, but some teams want to play the best, and if you're gonna compare yourself to the best and say that's the standard, then that's the way you end up scheduling.
Chris Vannini from The Athletic, college football writer, with us on BYU Sports Nation. Kalani Sitake came to BYU as a known, talented recruiter. The recruiting rankings are obviously one way to evaluate a recruiting class. What the players do on the field is another. But those rankings have been as follows in this order: 49, 66, and 77 over the past 3 years. How can we evaluate recruiting prowess and Kalani Sitake's ability to do so when those are the numbers and it's going down right now? Chris, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been great, and obviously last year or this latest class is not ranked great. But I think a big reason of that is also coming off of a poor season. That plays a factor, and it's always it's a little difficult. Obviously, BYU is a different institution than everybody else. It's hard to judge recruiting classes because guys come in at different times. I think there's something like 14 guys who are coming back from missions to play for the team for the first time. So do you count that toward this recruiting class or not? It's a little bit weird, but yeah, the past 4 classes, they've only had 4-star players, and 2 of those aren't on the roster anymore. One of them graduated, and Chaz Ayu is on his mission. So they have outperformed those recruiting rankings over the past those 4 years. 3 of those years, they were ranked higher in the Massey Index, an advanced stat that kind of ranks teams. The previous 3 years before last year, they were ranked higher than the recruiting classes, so they were outperforming them. They just weren't great classes, and then last year the bottom falls out. So, early in Bronco Mendenhall's tenure, he was getting classes ranked in the 40s, so, it can be done, but, if you don't win, it's not going to happen either.
Absolutely. And something BYU's done pretty well is develop those guys.
Yes.
If you get good recruits and develop them, now you've got, NFL draft picks and whatnot. But you had conversations with the BYU staff in the process here. What's your impression of Kalani Sitake and kind of BYU football after those conversations?
He's cautiously optimistic. He likes what he's seen from everybody with the new offense. He again really likes the changes that they made on defense. He thought spring went better than he expected, but he also admitted that every coach thinks that at this time of year. Every coach thinks they had a good spring and things could work, and you're not going to know until they get under the lights in Tucson for that first game. He's made the changes he thinks need to be made to turn it around, and he thinks the potential is there, but it's going to be hard to tell until they actually get on the field, and he knows that. He knows the pressure he's under. That's why he made so many changes, and now he's got to wait to see if those changes work.
I'm always interested to hear from the different national writers that write about BYU and the social media response they get from BYU fans in that instance. So what has the social media response from BYU fans been like for you after you put out your article, Chris?
We've had a lot of feedback from BYU people. So some people not happy with Kalani, others, thinking the team could be better. But just in general, there's been a lot of attention on this article and covering BYU. I mean, this is my 4th radio interview I've done with a different place about it. So I've noticed that there is definitely a ton of interest in the program, even coming off of a 4-9 season. So that fan base is certainly strong and vocal.
Yeah, if it's a little dry during the summer and you need something, just put out a BYU in college football landscape something, and you'll get a reaction. But Chris, where can people read more of your stuff?
We're part of the All-American, the college football arm of The Athletic. If you go to theathletic.com/All-American, that will be our college football coverage. It's a subscription site. We're currently running a deal. This BYU story was part of our State of the Program. We're doing every Power 5 team in most Group of Fives and independents. If you go to theathletic.com/State of the Program special, you can get 40% off a subscription for a year. It ends up being like $3 a month. It's like a cup of coffee a month, really, for some of the best college football writing there is. Stuart Mandel, the former Fox Sports and Sports Illustrated guy, leads the way for us. We've got a team of almost 10 writers now, and we're still growing. And, again, covering every team every day this offseason. And just there's no ads on the site either. Don't have to worry about that. So theathletic.com/State of the Program special is where you can get a discount. And we've been doing this since last August. The feedback's been great, and we appreciate everybody who's been reading.
Follow him at Chris Vannini on Twitter, writer for The Athletic. Chris, great stuff, man. Great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
On the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline, Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.